Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Welcome. Now we're going to begin our new series, which is called Living a Life of Total Forgiveness. And before we start, I want to explain to you why we're doing this. And this goes back about 5 years. And I attended a seminar in which the person asked us to forgive. He said, think of somebody that you have an issue with, somebody that you have resentment for, someone who's hurt you. Then think, well, that person, he was probably just doing the best that he could in that situation. And understanding that, just drop it. Just let it go. It was a short exercise. It only took 5 or 10 minutes. And so there were actually more than one person that I had issues with. I don't want to get into the details, but these were things that I was carrying with me for probably like 10 or 15 years. Things that were very upsetting to me. And so I decided that, well, what this person was saying, it did make sense. Why should I carry resentment? And these people were in difficult situations. I may have done the same thing if I were in their shoes. So I just dropped it. And a very interesting thing happened after I dropped it. I saw that there was much more energy in Krishna consciousness to do devotional service. And I saw that the resentment that I was holding on to was actually draining me of energy. And it was, the saying, once burned, twice shy. So having been hurt, I was afraid in many ways to give myself to others, even in Krishna consciousness. So it was quite amazing. And then I thought, there are probably many devotees in my shoes that are holding on to issues of resentment, that are upsetting them in some way, subtly upsetting them and affecting them. Maybe they don't even know. Or they're conscious of it and how it's affecting them, or upsetting them, or holding them back in some way, or draining energy in some way. So then I thought, well, actually I didn't think at that point of doing a class on forgiveness. But what happened subsequently, I heard an interview of a pastor who teaches forgiveness. And the interviewer has him on his show every year. And they speak about forgiveness every year. And the interviewer said, whenever you're on our show, your show rates in the top 3 shows of the year. And I think they actually have a show every day. Yeah, they do. So, or at least 5 days a week. So 250 shows a year, it rates every year in the top 3. And then the pastor said, the same thing is true when I give a sermon on forgiveness. It's always rated as by the people as my most favorite sermon, the sermon they get the most out of. So I thought, well, that is interesting, that this seems to be an issue that is relevant to practically everyone, or to many people. So then I thought, okay, based on my experience of what I gained by giving up issues that I had with people, letting them go, and based on what I heard on this radio show and the popularity or the relevance in people's lives of forgiveness, the need to forgive, I thought, well, let me develop a seminar. So I actually developed a seminar. It was a full-day seminar, about 6 or 8 hours. And the goal of the seminar was for devotees to identify an issue they have with an individual, and then to go through various processes in order to release the resentment, the anger they have. And one of the primary things that we realize, both myself and the attendees, is that the resentment that we hold really doesn't hurt the other person, it hurts ourselves. And sometimes we use resentment as a means of punishing. At least we think we're punishing them by talking ill of them to others, speaking ill of them, or perhaps hoping that whatever they had done to us would happen to them, someone else would do it. Or if something bad happens to that person, thinking, well, they deserve it based on how they treated me, and perhaps not even feeling in any way bad if something bad happens to them. So that's a contamination in the heart to hold on to those types of feelings, those types of emotions. So the realization that resentment hurts us more than anyone was very fundamental to the process of forgiveness. Another thing which is fundamental, which I found fundamental, if you study Srila Prabhupada's books, you will find that he talks about forgiveness as a primary or principal quality of anyone practicing spiritual life. That it's not an optional quality. Well, you can say, I can forgive up to a certain point, but if a person has done something beyond the threshold which I would consider unforgivable, then it's okay not to forgive them. But that's not actually how Prabhupada presents it. Now there was another thing, very interesting thing that I experienced that also encouraged me to develop this course, and that was that whenever we study a subject such as forgiveness or freedom from anger or even things like humility, when we study qualities, either we study them through verses which describe the qualities that we should develop, encourage us to develop the qualities, or we study them through the lives of people who exhibit those qualities. One thing I noticed that happens quite often, is there is a disconnect between the head and the heart. In other words, you can study a subject in depth from all angles. You can read stories about people who exhibit the qualities which you've studied. But it doesn't necessarily mean there will be any change of heart. It may all simply remain intellectual, that you understand, I should forgive. I understand the importance of forgiveness. I know the stories. I can tell you all the stories about great devotees who've forgiven. I may even be inspired by those stories. But it may not relate to the personal issues I have in my life. And this is what happened to me. And that was of great concern. I was very inspired by reading the story of Thakur Haridas. Thakur Haridas, you may know, Thakur Haridas was born a Muslim, but he was Nam Acharya. He was the Acharya of the holy name, and he was being honored because he was a Nam Acharya, chanting the Mahamantra. And the Muslim community was very upset about this, because a Muslim had become a so-called Hindu, or a so-called Muslim had become a so-called Hindu, but Thakur Haridas was born in a Muslim family. So they were afraid that many Muslims would convert. So Thakur Haridas was ordered by the government to be killed by being caned publicly. And so what happened was, in the center of a village or a town, he would be taken and he would be shown, this is what happens if you're a Muslim and you chant Hare Krishna. This is what's going to happen to you. We will cane you to death. Beat or whipped, caned or whipped. So they did that, and Thakur Haridas didn't die. And I believe they went to a total of 21 marketplaces, and they were beating him, and he wouldn't die. So what was happening while he was being beaten is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it's very, very wonderful, and it's very, very inspirational. While he was being beaten, he was praying for the welfare of the people who were trying to kill him. Can you imagine that? These men are whipping him with the intention of killing him, and he is praying for them. Now, in this world, there are so many bad people. There are so many dishonest people. There are so many people out to cheat and take advantage, even in the name of religion, even in the name of welfare. So when I heard this story, I thought, this is so wonderful. Here is someone who's being beaten, and he's not only forgiving them, but he's praying for their benefit, praying for them to be blessed. Very inspiring story. And I personally was extremely inspired by this. But the interesting thing was that even though I was inspired by this, the issues that I had with certain individuals who I felt had hurt me or disturbed my life in some way, for which it was difficult for me to forgive, the issues I had with them remained even after being inspired by hearing this story in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. I thought, this is concerning, that I could be inspired, but still it's not affecting my heart. We have another story in the Bhagavatam, the story of Ambarish. Ambarish was a king, and he was, Durvasa Muni had come, and what Ambarish was doing was that he was fasting. He was doing a Ekadasi fast at the time Ambarish came. And as Durvasa came. And whenever you have a guest, you have to feed the guest, honor the guest. That's the proper etiquette. So Durvasa said, I have to bathe. When I finish bathing, then I will come for the meal. And Ambarish had a conundrum because he had been fasting, and whenever you do a fast on Ekadasi, there's a certain time you need to break fast to make it successful. But that time was going to come that time was going to come before he was going to feed him. And the etiquette is that when you feed a guest, you eat afterwards. So now he had to eat something before he was feeding his guest. So he consulted some Brahmins, and they said, well, what you can do is drink water. And because drinking water is considered breaking a fast, it's also considered not breaking a fast. So that way you can consider you've broken your fast, at the same time you won't offend him by eating before him. So Durvasa Muni had mystic power, and he understood that Ambarish had offended him. Not had offended him. Ambarish had taken water. And so Durvasa was offended by that. He said, oh, you have broken your fast. You have broken your fast before you fed me. He was so upset. Durvasa Muni can become very, very angry when he's upset. So he created a demon. He was a demon that was going to kill Ambarish. But what happened was that the Lord protected Ambarish, and he sent his Sudarshan Chakra after Durvasa. And then Durvasa realized he had committed an offense. And he went to Lord Vishnu begging for forgiveness, and Lord Vishnu said, no, you must go to Ambarish and ask him. So anyway, he went back to Ambarish Maharaj and asked for forgiveness, and Ambarish Maharaj said, you haven't done anything wrong, it's my fault. But he wasn't just saying that, he actually felt that, he actually meant that. That he felt that he had committed the offense. He took total responsibility. He didn't say, oh, right, Durvasa, since you're asking for forgiveness, I'll forgive you. Rather, he said, you have not committed any offense. So these stories are very, very inspirational. And one of the things that I realized by hearing these stories was that, or realized why I wasn't able to give up my resentment for some of the people in my life that I feel had offended me. One of the reasons was because I was thinking, well, this is Thakur Haridas, and this is Durvasa, and this is Ambarish Maharaj. They are exalted devotees. These are great devotees found in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I am not like them. I am an ordinary person. So in a sense, not consciously, but I would say subconsciously, I kind of wrote off that I could be fully inspired by them to act in the way they acted because they were in a different league than I am. So I could only understand their actions as an ideal, but not as something that would practically do anything for me right now. And that was a big mistake. But it's a reality I think many of us experience. We read about exalted devotees, and then we think that's them. It's a nice story, something I can aspire for. The other thing that inspired me to do the course was that I realized that often we think that we don't need to work on problems that we have, but what we need to do is work on our sadhana, our devotional practices, and that way we'll become purified and transcend those problems. Or we will develop the opposite qualities, and therefore those problems will just become dissolved, which is true, but it's not entirely true, because where we get thrown off is, let's say we have a problem. In this case, we're talking about resentment. So let's say we have ill feelings, resentment, anger towards another person. And we might think, well, if I execute devotional service, eventually I will become purified, and that anger, that resentment will go away. And then in that thinking, then we think there's no real need for me to focus on giving up that resentment in my present stage. Or we'll think I couldn't do it anyway. It's not a proper understanding. Just like we have in Shishashtakam, Lord Chaitanya says, Trinadapi sunichena toroi vasahishna amanina manadena kirtaniya siddhahari. So Mahaprabhu says, you should chant the holy name, we should chant the holy name in a humble state of mind, thinking ourselves lower than the straw in the street. We should offer all respects to others and not want any respect for ourselves. Now, if you look at that, you could say, that is not possible for someone who is practicing devotional service. That's only possible for someone who is on a high level of Krishna consciousness, because on this high level of Krishna consciousness, they're going to naturally respect others. They're not going to want any respect for themselves. And they're going to feel themselves like a low living entity. They're going to feel that others are better than them, which is, of course, is true. But it's interesting to know that this verse is given in the beginning of the Shishashtakam. And that means Mahaprabhu is saying, in this mood, in this state of mind, we should chant. So basically he's telling, this instruction wouldn't be for those who are already humble, because they wouldn't, the great devotees who are humble wouldn't need this instruction, would they? We need that instruction. Why would Mahaprabhu instruct us, if we were already humble, that we need to chant in a humble state of mind? He's instructing those who are not humble that you need to be humble in order to chant the holy name properly. So what does that mean? You find in Bhagavad Gita there are so many instructions that we should be a certain way or we should not be a certain way. We should do something and not do something. And the very things that we're being told to do and not do are the things that pure devotees do. So then we could think, yes, when I become a pure devotee, I will do them. But the point we're making here is that we're told to do them now. And that is how we'll become pure devotees. And if you chant in a humble state of mind, perhaps it's not full realization of humility, but if you chant in a humble state of mind, or at least make the effort to honor others, not seek honor for yourself, then your chanting will be elevated. And in that state, you can come to actual humility based on spiritual purification. So, to give a simple example of this, the most simple example, I'll give two examples, they're very simple to understand. We chant the holy name. Every day we chant the holy name. From the very beginning of our practices of bhakti, we begin chanting. But we know that a symptom of a further advancement in Krishna consciousness is known as ruchi, or taste. And as one's taste increases, one's chanting increases. One wants to chant more and more. Now, it would be foolish to say that I'm not going to chant until I come to the stage of ruchi, taste, because when I come to the stage of ruchi, I'll naturally want to chant. Because obviously, the answer would be, well, you won't get to the stage of ruchi unless you chant. Even though you may not want to chant, or you may not have a taste for chanting, you won't get to the stage of ruchi unless you chant. Makes sense, right? And we all understand that. We would think it foolish if someone said they're going to wait. Well, how will you get to ruchi? How will you get a taste if you don't chant? Similarly, we need to act in the way, presently we need to act in the way which we want to develop in the future. If we act humbly, that helps us develop humility, and it also helps our bhakti. If we give up resentment, if we give up criticism, it helps us execute bhakti. It increases the power of our bhakti, the quality of our bhakti. So we need to employ the qualities ultimately to enhance our bhakti, which will then, as a byproduct, help us naturally develop the qualities. There was also, to emphasize this point, I heard a lecture, I was present, and Prabhupada said, they were talking about developing devotional qualities, and he said, you should see how your devotional qualities are developing. So he wanted us to be conscious of that. And then you also have a story in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that there's a temple called Gundicha in Jagannath Puri, and they have a festival every year where they clean the temple. So that story is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and what they're cleaning out of the temple is compared to the dirt within the heart. And then Prabhupada describes different kinds of contamination in the heart, which we need to be conscious of and need to weed out. At least you could say, well, how can I just weed it out? Well, one of what we're talking about here is devotional practice. You practice, for example, living purely. You practice glorifying devotees. You practice not criticizing devotees. You practice not being envious. You say, well, maybe I'm envious. There's envy in my heart. Of course, not maybe, I am. But I practice not manifesting that. I control that. So in the same way, when we talk about forgiveness in this course, we're not saying that you can achieve this level of complete forgiveness on a realized platform, but we are saying you can practice it. You can practice a life of forgiveness. Total forgiveness. You can actually do that. And that's what we're talking about. Sadhana is a practice. So we want to practice forgiveness. Even I feel like, well, I don't have it in me. You can practice it. You can do it. There are principles you can practice by which you can understand whether you're acting on the level of forgiveness or you're acting on the level of resentment. And I can promise you, and I've seen this many times, if you give up resentment for another person, you will be so much more inspired, so much more peaceful, so much happier. I've seen it in the seminars I do. Sometimes you can actually see, it's almost like a ghost left somebody. You can see a change in their face and the energy. It's just like this. It was like a toxic substance holding on to resentment, holding on because it's not the heart of a spiritualist. It's not the heart of a devotee of the Lord to be holding on to grudges and to envious feelings towards others and to be resentful and hoping something negative or bad would happen to someone. You know, a devotee, what is one of the predominant symptoms of a devotee of the Lord, a spiritualist? It's compassion. Compassion even for those who hurt him or her. So you can see, it's not, if you're practicing spiritual life and you're holding on to something such as resentment, it's a paradox. And it's like, like trying to paddle upstream or climb a mountain with weights on your feet. It's not, I would say it's not something optional that you can hold on to. Don't see it as, well, when I become more advanced, then I'll be able to do it, or I'll do it later. Don't think of it as something optional. Think of it as something that you need to do because it's a contamination within your heart, which is holding you back, and think of it as something that you can do now. And so this is extremely important. This is all part of the introduction before we even get into anything, because I want to set these foundations for you, and then we'll have some questions before I go further. One of the biggest obstacles I've seen devotees face in dealing with forgiveness is just simply the belief or the feeling that they can't forgive. They've been hurt to such an extent that they just can't forgive. And we spoke about this last week. In the last section on vows, the I can't do this. And what I found fundamental for anyone to forgive is, first they have to come to acknowledge that they can do it. Because if they don't acknowledge this, then they can't go any further. It's already written off. And I just want to be here to say that you can do it. I want to tell a couple stories just to help encourage you. That I was told when I was developing my seminar, a devotee who knew me sent me a story about a woman who had a son who was at a bar. And the son was, I guess he was trying to pick up on another woman at the bar, another young girl. And he was touching her. And she got very upset. And she actually killed him. And so you could imagine how a mother would feel if her son were stabbed to death just because he was touching a girl in a bar. The amazing thing was that this mother decided that she would dedicate her time and energy to help this girl. Of course, this girl was sentenced to life imprisonment, or maybe she was sentenced to death, I don't know, but at least life imprisonment. And this mother became her therapist. I thought, that's such an amazing story, that a woman could actually do that, could actually feel that much compassion for this girl who was obviously disturbed, feel so much compassion that she would dedicate herself to help this girl. So that inspired me, because this was not a story of Thakur Haridas, this was not a story of Ambarish Maharaj, this was not a story of Prahlad Maharaj forgiving his father, blessing his father, even though his father's trying to kill him. This was a story of what we could call an ordinary woman. She doesn't seem very ordinary, but ordinary in a general sense, not that she had any background as a great nun or history in her family. Just a woman, what we would call an ordinary woman, who acted extraordinarily. So I found that story extremely encouraging to me, because it's more like a peer, a person we can relate to that has done this. And it goes back to my point. When we feel I can't forgive, I was hurt so deeply, I was so deeply wounded. What this person did was so harmful, so inhumane. Whatever we may feel, you actually can. There's nothing. I'm not saying that there's nothing in that's stopping you. There are things stopping you in the present, but ultimately there's nothing stopping you. You can do it, and that's fundamental. You can't go anywhere in forgiveness if you don't accept that. Now, I'll give you an example. I gave this last week. You have a pen. You see the pen, and you put the pen in your hand. And so think of this pen as resentment, and the pen's in your hand, and you're holding on to it. And you've been holding on to this pen for a long time, and it starts to feel comfortable, because this is how you punish that person. This is how you get back at that person. This is how you point your finger at that person. This is what this person did to me. And you could use that even as an excuse while you're failing in life, because this person did this to me, that's why I'm failing. And so you just, your whole life story can evolve around this resentment, this pen, and so you're holding on to it. And so you might feel like, well, if I give up this pen, then my story will collapse. I'll have no excuse. I'll have no one to blame, which is often the reason why we don't want to give it up, because I can use the pen as my excuse for failure. I can use it as my excuse for being angry. I can use it for my excuse for my resentment, for being upset. I can use it as my excuse for anything. And then we've been holding on to it for so long. And then now I say, open your hand and drop it, which is very easy. And you say, I can't. That feels too uncomfortable to let it go. This is the weapon by which I punish this person. This is the weapon I use to punish this person. And you're asking me to let it go? And I say, yes, you can, but you have to choose to. You can. It's not connected to you. Resentment is not connected to your soul. It's an emotion. Emotion means what? Emotion, energy in motion. It's an energy. It's going through you. You can drop it. You could drop it right now. You could, no matter how you've been hurt, you could drop it. I'm not saying you will be able to tonight or next week, but I'm saying you can. That's fundamental. Because if you think you can't, you're stuck. Now, there are reasons we may think we can't. And a lot of those reasons evolve around beliefs we have about forgiveness. Now, for example, I'll give you a simple belief that many of us have. Often when we're hurt, we are waiting for the other person to do what? Right? Who knows? What are we waiting for the other person to do before we can forgive them? Anybody out there could tell me? It starts with an A, and it ends with an E, and it has a Z in it. It has a P in it. Say, I'm sorry, yeah, apologize. Yes, apologize. We've been hurt, we feel angry, we feel resentment, and we're waiting for the person to apologize. Now, the problem with that is the person may not even know that they hurt us. They may have no idea that we're upset, and therefore, if you're waiting for them to apologize, they're not going to apologize because there's nothing to apologize for. And if you believe that you can only forgive someone when they apologize, then you're going to hold that resentment for your entire life. And maybe you're thinking, well, it'll go away, it will lessen itself. It's not always true. It may be true, it may not be true. My point here is that's a system of belief that you have about forgiveness, that the person has to apologize. You may have another belief. A belief may go like this. If someone commits a minor offense to me, I can forgive them. But if it's a major offense, I cannot, or I will not, or it's not acceptable. Wherever that comes from, that could come from your family, it could come from a religious institution, it can come from teachers, it can come from so many ways, but we have a belief. If it goes beyond this threshold of severity, they cannot be forgiven, no matter what. So then because of that belief, you're stuck in the I can't. So you see, if you examine your beliefs about forgiveness, you might find something that you believe that's preventing you. I'll give you another example, preventing you from forgiving. Sometimes resentment is handed down through generations. You may have been handed down resentment for a certain ethnic group. Generational resentment. In other words, you may personally have nothing against a particular ethnic group or religious group, but your parents do, your grandparents do, your great-grandparents do, and your great-great-grandparents do, and it was just handed down to you. So therefore you grow up hating this class or group of people. Your belief is those people are bad, your people are good. And so whatever they do is unforgivable. You cannot forgive them because your belief is they're bad, and that they're bad. And so you've inherited this kind of resentment. So therefore you come to the point and say, no, we cannot forgive them. Now, what's important, and you might be sitting there looking at this and saying, oh, that's easy for Mahatma to say. He doesn't know what happened to me. He does not know what happened to me. Okay, now, it's important, very, very important, to understand that punishing an individual, acknowledging that an individual has done something wrong, taking legal action against an individual, doing whatever is necessary to deal with an individual in the way they should be dealt with according to what they've done, and forgiving them are not mutually exclusive. Because I know some of you are thinking, If I forgive them, I'm letting them off the hook. If I forgive them, they'll do it again. Because I've done this seminar so many times, and this always comes up. Because we tend to think forgiveness means letting someone off the hook. It doesn't have to mean that at all. For example, in the story I told before of the mother whose son was murdered by this young girl, this girl was in jail. This lady was helping this girl in jail. This lady was not trying to get the girl out of jail. This lady could have prosecuted that girl, put her in jail, and then gone to jail every week to help her. You see? And when I looked at this, then I began to realize that actually, if a person needs to be punished, if a person needs to be dealt with, the best way to deal with them while you're taking them to court or whatever you're doing is to forgive them. Because then you can actually deal with them in the most compassionate and proper way, because there are no ill feelings. But at the same time, for that person's benefit or the benefit of society, they will need to be dealt with. So punishment, dealing with them, forgiveness, they're not mutually exclusive. So it's important to understand that. If a person has done something wrong to you, you can let them know that what they did was wrong. You can also let them know that I personally hold no grudges for you. I harbor no ill feelings. I don't condone what you did. You may even take them to court. I may not acknowledge you as a person that I would want to befriend any longer. I may have no longer any respect for you, whatever the case may be. But at the same time, you can let them know, personally, you've forgiven them. You have no ill feelings in that way. So it doesn't mean that when you forgive someone, it means you have to have a relationship with that person. It may mean that, but it doesn't have to mean that. Well, what if I forgive this person, and then are we trying to reestablish a relationship? No. You may forgive the person and let them know that I really want nothing. I forgive you for what you've done, but I don't want to be close to you because of what you've done, because of how you've hurt me, whatever. So that's important in understanding the getting over the I can't part of it, that you can still maintain a safe distance and you can give up your resentment. Because again, if we go back to this point, the resentment, the anger, the envy, the hurt, all of that, it's here. It's within us, and that's what we're carrying around. That's a contamination within our heart. Now, if we take it even further, a stage further, in the Bhagavatam, it said sometimes when a person is hurt, if they blame the other person, they may be equally to blame by blaming them, because they may not understand that they've done something for which they deserve to be punished, and that other person was just a vehicle for their punishment, to get a reaction for what they did. So that sounds very uncompassionate in a sense. But in the broader sense, because we understand that all our suffering, all our enjoyment is due to our past actions, if we can see when a person hurts us, if we could see it as, I must have done something to deserve this. This person is just a vehicle of my karma. For me to blame him would be foolish. Or as Bhagavatam says, I am to be blamed if I blame him. But rather think, this has come to me, something I have done. Now let me learn how to deal with it in a Krishna conscious way. And this is the value of forgiveness. Because forgiveness, like tolerance, it gives us an opportunity to elevate ourselves, to practice tolerance, to practice forgiveness. When we are hurt, we want to retaliate. But if we practice tolerance, if we practice forgiveness, then we won't retaliate, but we'll act as a devotee should act. And in order to act that way, we're going to need to be more Krishna conscious. So the hurt can actually help us because we're dealing with something very difficult. And if we learn how to deal with it, we'll become better. We'll become better people. Okay, so that's my preface to this course. That was like a 40-minute preface. I want to go back if you have any questions. Do you have any questions? So let's start with, can you go up a little bit? I have to go back and look at your chat, see if there's anything there. Let's read it. Where does it start? There? I have to read your chat a little bit. Okay. At least the chat which is relevant to what we're speaking about. Okay. Okay, Bhakti Jeff says, this is great because I've been wondering where forgiveness lies in Krishna consciousness. Generally, I've been thinking if I just keep chanting, then naturally I will forgive. Someday, hopefully, if your chanting is good enough. But, you know, it's I would say anything, we should not wait for tomorrow to act the way a devotee should act today. You know what I mean? If you think about the whole process of purification, we come in impure, and at that point, when we take up the process of bhakti, then we're meant to act purely from that point. We're meant to, you know, in a sense, fake it. For lack of a better word, fake it until you make it. So Prabhupada, you know, he taught us, be enthusiastic, even about the things you naturally are not enthusiastic about presently, because that will help you. So I may feel offended by someone and may want to say something nasty. I don't. I tolerate it. Or I may even serve that person who offended me. I don't really feel like serving them, but I know I should because it's the right thing. So I try not to take offense. I try to serve. I try to appreciate their service. So that's sadhana. We're not acting according to our impulses, but we're acting according to what is proper. So we should never wait and think someday when I become Krishna conscious, I'll be able to act in a certain way. That may be true in a limited sense. Yes, when you become Krishna conscious, there's certain things you cannot do now. Experiencing ecstatic symptoms, that cannot be artificially done, although people try to do it. But there are things you can do now in terms of behavior, in terms of practical actions. So RT is asking, what if a person doesn't want to forgive? Then, first stage, we have to get over the I cannot forgive. So if you get over the I cannot forgive, if you acknowledge I can do it, then you're acknowledging I can do it if I want to. So now you're at stage 2, which is I don't want to. There are 3 stages we have to get over. One is I can. The next one is I want to, and the third one is, well, when are you going to do it? So we get over there, I can't, by acknowledging, yes, I can do it if I want. Here's the pen, right? I can drop it if I want. But I don't want. So now, the reason we don't want is because the pen is with the pen, the resentment is how we punish the person. We want to punish the person. So we have to consider, what is that doing to me as an individual? How is that contaminating my heart? How is that disturbing me emotionally? Because whatever form of resentment that I have for this individual, whatever ill feelings I have for this individual, whatever anger I have for this individual, I'm the one every day, 24/7, who's carrying that in my heart. I have to bear that burden every day. Do you really want to bear that burden? Is that something you want to carry around? I mean, imagine you're carrying it around for 5 years. That's a heavy burden to carry around for 5 years. Wouldn't it be better just like tonight, just let it go, if you could, if you knew how? Then carry it around for another 5 years and hope it goes away, or 10 years, or maybe it won't go away in 10 years. It's likely it'll be there to some degree unless you consciously deal with it. So do you really want to carry that around? You're saying, I don't want to forgive you. Is it more important to you to have ill feelings towards this person in some way, punish this person? It's said that forgiveness means to give up all hope for a better past. Forgiveness means to give up all hope for a better past. Interesting, isn't it? So when we're holding on to this resentment, we're holding on to something that happened in the past, which we wish it hadn't gone that way. But it had. It's already happened. And we're in the past wishing it wouldn't have happened that way. So we want to give up all hope for that better past that never happened. And it is said that when you forgive someone, you finally release not that person, but you release yourself. Because as I said before, often that person doesn't even know they offended you. So you actually release yourself. By forgiving them, you release yourself. And often it is said that we can't forgive because we can't forgive ourselves. Have you ever done something so bad that you don't even forgive yourself for doing? So often people don't forgive others because they have not learned how to forgive themselves. So think of the I can't forgive, I don't want to. Those are two stages you have to overcome. So we say, I can do it, I want to do it, and then we deal with, okay, when are you going to do it? At least you acknowledge the two stages. You have to come to those two stages. I can do it, I choose to do it, I want to do it, when? Okay, that question, Bhakti Jeff. When I think about how something happened to me and get a moment's clarity on the futility of keeping that grudge feeling, I try my best to let it go. And I feel a release from that pen and love towards that person. But it's never fully, completely erased. That's what it feels like. This is my own desire to keep a little left. Yes, a lot of times. You see, you have to meditate on this point. That resentment is our weapon by which we punish the person. So you remember I've taken up the pen. This is your resentment. So think of this maybe as like a weapon now. So, okay, I'm going to let it go, but I'm going to hold on to a little weapon, maybe a little pin, and I can just pin them. You know what that person did to me? You want to tell somebody about it. There's a checklist to see if you've actually totally forgiven it. And one of the ways you know you've totally forgiven is you never tell that story again to anybody. Because whenever you have an issue with somebody, there's a story, right? This is what the person, I can tell my stories about the people I forgave. This is what they did to me. I have my story, right? You know you're forgiven when you no longer want to tell that story. You've dropped it. It's gone. It's past. It's out of your heart. But why do you want to tell that story? Because that's how you punish them, by telling the story. Now, let's say you told that story 10 times. You tell me that story 10 times. And after I hear it 10 times, I say, Bhakti Jeff, could you sit down with me? I really want to talk to you. And for the next 8 hours, I would like you to tell me that same story again. But instead of telling me it in 5 minutes, I would like you to tell it to me in 30 seconds. And what I would like you to do for the next 8 hours is tell me that story over and over and over and over and over again in its 30-second form. What do you think would happen after about 20 minutes? You'd probably start thinking, this is really stupid. And after about 30 minutes, 35, you probably couldn't even tell the story anymore. You would just think, this is like really stupid that I'm still telling this story, that I've carried this story with me. So that's the point we want to come to realize that we have better things in life to do than tell stories about how people hurt us. We want to tell stories about how we help people, not about how people hurt us. That's what a devotee is, isn't it? Isn't that what a devotee is all about? Do we want to talk about how to help people? We want to discuss with one another, inspire one another, how to help people, what we've done to help people? Do we want to sit around and talk about how we've been hurt? At some level, yes, we want to do that as therapy to get over it, but not perpetually. And I can guarantee for most people, if they had to tell their story that much, at a certain point, they would just start to think and realize, this is really stupid to continually hold on to the story. So that's what we're doing. Resentment means we're holding on to the story and we're telling it over and over and over again. As I said, it becomes our modus operandi, our excuse for why we are what we are. Why are you not successful? Why are you not achieving this? Why are you not? Because when I was 7 years old, my mother said this. When I was 12 years old, my father said this. 10 years ago, this devotee did this to me. Or this person said this to me. Or 15 years ago, this is what happened in the Hare Krishna movement. It's like we have all these people and situations to blame for where we're at. We don't want to do that. We want to serve our spiritual master. We want to serve Krishna. We don't want a list of reasons why we're not serving Krishna. We want to figure out how we can serve Krishna. And in figuring out how we can serve Krishna, Guru and Krishna better, we'll inevitably come to the realization that we cannot hold on to grudges. We will come to that realization. We cannot hold on to grudges because it's simply going to hold us down. It holds us in a very negative frame. And it ties us to this situation that happened many, many years ago. And that situation is still affecting us today. It's still playing out today in our lives. That thing that happened, that I was hurt 10 years ago, my life's still being affected by this person. It's like I have this person is anchoring me, and everything I do is anchored, is controlled in some sense by this person. There's no reason for it. So the reason I call this class Living a Life of Total Forgiveness is because we don't want to forgive 93%. It's like if you have cancer and the doctor says, we'll cut out 93% of it. Would you be happy? No, you want 100% cut out. So the same thing, you want to forgive totally. You don't want any of it left. So, April says, should forgiveness be taken in baby steps for those who harbor pain? And if so, is it a day by day? On a day by day, you got to move it over so I can see. I can't see. Is it a day-by-day basis that one should realistically use as a goal? That's a very good question. And it's different for different people. In my seminar on forgiveness, it lasts 6 hours. And my goal is that at the end of 6 hours, you will have dropped it. But it depends on who you are and how deeply you've been hurt. And I would say in my seminars, 80% of the people, 85%, they drop it within 6 hours. And I do things that are very therapeutic to help them. For some people, they need to deal with it a little further. As I said, if your beginning stage is acknowledgement that you can do it, and you want to do it, that's going to speed up the process. I would suggest you look at any beliefs you have that you can acknowledge that are making it difficult, like the beliefs that we discussed. I can't forgive unless they apologize. I can't forgive for certain offenses, and so on. And is it a day by day? I could say on a day by day basis, yes. And after you forgive, it's still on a day by day basis. That you see, once you forgive, you have to continue to forgive. You have to live that. Otherwise, it can come back for sure. So if you come to these classes, I think we'll do about at least 6 of these. If you come to them, then we'll give you processes. And now, it's a good thing you brought this up. I want you to go to my website, which is www.tstrain.com, and then go to newsletters. I believe one newsletter is there, Living a Life of Total Forgiveness. It's something like that. And there's about 40, 45 newsletters there, and they're all titled, and there may be another newsletter on forgiveness. I can't remember. So I wrote them like 2 or 3 years ago. There's definitely one, Living a Life of Total Forgiveness. And you'll find that extremely helpful. That will give you some, what I've seen in the work I've done with forgiveness, I've seen that for many people, it's kind of like a nut that is stuck to a screw and it's kind of rusted and it's a little difficult to get off. So you have to get some WD-40, you have to get a bigger wrench, you may need help, someone else to hold the screw. And you got to work on it, put a lot of pressure on it. And some people's resentment is like a screw that's really on tight and really rusted. And it's really, really hard in the beginning to get it loose. But once they get it loose, once you get a screw loose with the wrench or the pliers, then you can just take it off with your fingers. And it comes off. So I've seen in the courses I've done that once we get it to a certain point, then it's like, okay, you feel so much better. You just want to get it off. And the things that which you will read in my article, and the things that we'll be doing for the next 6 or so sessions, will be like that WD-40 and the wrench, and it'll be loosening it. It'll be coming a little bit looser, and you'll feel each week it's going to be more possible to let it go, or more of a desire, because really you need a desire to want to let it go. And so at a certain point, we're going to get that bolt, we're going to get it really loose, and you're just going to be able to take it off if you want to. So there's I can forgive, I want to forgive, and then so when will you do it? So you will do it when that screw is loosened. So read the article, stay tuned. So, Slemshi, Hare Krishna Mahatma Prabhu, accept my obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for this wonderful class. I have a question. Please forgive my inability to present my question. I have been disappointed with the devotee's action, and it has been hard for me to get over it. Yes. I think we all have been in this situation, and I think one powerful way to deal with this is just to realize that it takes a lot of energy from you to dislike somebody. It actually takes energy from you to dislike somebody. Negative energy, not positive energy. You have to put out negative energy. So I'm not denying that you were hurt by this person, but now that you're hurt, to hold on to that, it requires a certain kind of energy. And it's actually draining you. So what I would suggest for some of you is let's say for tomorrow, do an experiment. And say, tomorrow I'm going to take this resentment and I'm just going to drop it, at least for the day. I'm going to drop it. I'm going to forgive that person. I'm just going to, as best I can, I'm just going to let it go. Just that person, they have their own history. Who knows how they were brought up? Who knows why they said what they did? Who knows what was going on in their life at the time when they did what they did? They're probably just like me, just trying to keep things together, and they may not even know what they did, or even though they did it, they may not have been controlled. Whatever. I'm just trying to be a compassionate devotee and a humble devotee and a generous devotee. So tomorrow I'm just going to drop any ill feelings I have towards them, any anger, any resentment. I'll just drop it tomorrow. And try that on. See how that works for you. And if that works for you, continue on Thursday. And if that works, continue on Friday. You see, we have to create a new pattern. Now we have a pattern of holding on to resentment. We have to create a pattern of letting it go, turning it the other way. It's positive energy. To be a devotee, we have to have this positive energy, not this negative energy. This negative energy, it's Maya's way to keep us in this world. I'll tell you a nice story. This is a really wonderful story. Srila Prabhupada once said that to be a guru is a thankless task, because it is the nature of a devotee that he will never criticize another devotee. But when you become guru, you have to criticize. So he said it's like being a guru is contrary to the nature of Vaishnav. So I just heard a story today. My godbrother told me that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was approached by one of his disciples, and the disciple was criticizing. He was complaining to Bhaktisiddhanta about a particular disciple. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, the spiritual master has to criticize the disciple. He doesn't want to. It's a thankless task. But he has to in order to correct the disciple. But you're not a spiritual master, so why would you want to criticize that person? Interesting, isn't it? He was saying, I have to do that because I'm the guru. It's a thankless task. Vaishnavas do not criticize other Vaishnavas. That is not something they do not want to do. I have to do it as guru. Why would you want to take up that position? You don't have to. It's kind of like, I'm a grihasta. I have my own business. I work 20, 30, 40, 50 hours a week to maintain my family with that business. If I met a sannyasi who didn't need to do that, a sannyasi who didn't need as much money as I need to maintain my family, and he was out doing business, I would tell him the same thing. I would say, Maharaj, I have this task. I have to do that. I have to spend so many hours a day, a week, maintaining my family, where I could be preaching, I could be studying Shastra. I have to do this. These others. Why would you want to do that when you can just preach and people will support you? So it was like the same thing. Like, why? You don't have to criticize. Why would you want to? Interesting, isn't it? Meditate on this. It's going to, these things are going to take time to settle in. The nut is tight, so each week we're going to loosen it. And then next week I'm going to put you in, I'm going to send you to another article I wrote, which will be the WD-40 article, which could really, really, really help you. Some people, just by reading that article, they forgave a person who hurt them, or forgave people who hurt them. So, Alan, Hare Krishna, dear friends, remember that your parents, neighbors, politician friends are all ignorant of the true nature of reality. They are poorly educated by ignorant people. They are as ignorant as you or me. Forgive them so you can forgive yourself. Love them so you can love yourself. You think you're better than them, then forgive them. Be holy. Don't just think you're holy, be holy. Very nice. I like that. Maybe you can make a t-shirt. Don't just think you're holy, be holy. That is so nice. Yeah. Walk the talk. Okay. Sharn 108 says, Hare Krishna, this is wonderful what Mahatma is teaching. I partook in a course a number of years ago, now teaching us how to let go. I can honestly say from my heart, this process really works. And by repeating over and over again, we keep it alive. Yes, you know what I found? That once I taught the course on forgiveness, I found this personally and also for devotees who took the course, that things that once you come to a point where you were able to give up resentment, it may have been difficult to do it, but once you do it, it becomes so much easier to do it in the future because you realize how important it is to do it for your own sanity. And what often happens is that once you do it, you realize that how much suffering you underwent holding on to resentment, that you don't even become offended by things which would have offended you in the past. You're able to deal with it and just let it go, kind of bounce off you. And that is such an important quality to have in executing devotional service. So I found that after teaching, the forgiveness course 3 or 4 times, that things that would normally bother me, I just, or people I thought had offended, I didn't feel it was worth getting upset anymore because it's just like, it's like you have a thorn, the thorn of resentment. It's in your finger and it's stinging you. And it's stinging and stinging and but for some reason you're holding on that thorn because you think, with this thorn I'm going to get back I'm going to get back at that person who put this thorn in my finger, and I'm going to hold this thorn so they can see how much I'm suffering, and I'm going to let everybody see this is the person who put this thorn in my hand. And this thorn is just stinging, ow, ow, ow. And finally, you pull it out. Oh, that feels good. Now, after pulling it out, do you think you want to take that thorn and put it back in your finger again? I don't think so. And if another person comes and sticks a thorn in your finger, you're just going to want to take it out, and you're not going to want to show it to anybody because you're going to feel much better. That's what I've experienced and what many devotees who've attended the seminars have experienced. So that's part of the importance of learning the process of forgiveness. It becomes a process of insulation. So Bhakti Jeff is asking, if you have time, how can we forgive ourselves? I think we should dedicate one or more classes to that topic of how we can forgive ourselves. One thing that Srila Prabhupada said is that we should be strict with ourselves and lenient with others, but it didn't mean that, Prabhupada didn't mean we shouldn't forgive ourselves. And if we don't forgive ourselves, then it will end up being Maya's trick to hold us down. It's all negative energy. It's all just holding us down. It's Krishna consciousness is positive. I am fallen. It's okay that I'm fallen. Lord Chaitanya is merciful. He forgives me. Krishna forgives me. Can I not forgive myself if Krishna is willing, if Mahaprabhu is willing to forgive me, if my spiritual master is willing to forgive me? We have to talk more. Just an idea that the movement of Mahaprabhu is a movement of compassion, of understanding, of sympathy. And we see that Prabhupada engaged everybody, even people doing all kinds of horrible things. If they were willing to be engaged, he would engage them. He never sent anyone away who was willing to be engaged in service, no matter what they did, no matter how morally wrong it was, or spiritually off it was. As long as they were willing to engage, he would engage them. As long as they were willing to follow, make the effort to follow, he was willing to engage them. So he was willing to forgive any sincere soul. So really, if you find a spark of sincerity within your heart for service to Krishna, then you should have the generosity to forgive yourself. Because it's the sincerity that's important. And that's what Prabhupada saw. And that's why he was able to forgive, because he saw beyond the fall. The fall is conditional. He saw the sincerity. So that's important. But anyway, we will talk about it. We need to give it a whole, at least an hour or more. So, Bhakti Jeff has a question here. Can you move up on the screen? Pull it up. The other way. Yeah, Bhakti Jeff on the bottom. Can you move it up? Or no, it doesn't. Okay. Does Srila Prabhupada and Krishna forgive me when I wake up past Mangal Arti some days, have trouble attentively chanting, or find myself allowing for a split second to be attracted to objects of the senses? Yes. Now, it's like you go to the doctor and you say, "Doctor, I'm sick." And the doctor says, "Oh, very bad. I don't treat sick people. I only want to see healthy people. Get out of my office." No. We come to Krishna consciousness because what you're describing is the way we are. We don't always get up early. We have trouble attentively chanting. Our mind is attracted to sense gratification. What Krishna and Prabhupada see is our effort, our sincerity, our desire, our willingness to continue in Krishna consciousness even though we don't always follow it well. That's what they see. And that's the most important thing. It's the sincerity of purpose, the willingness to advance. And Mahaprabhu's mercy is so unlimited. But we should take advantage of it in a positive sense to uplift ourselves. And if we get up late one morning or we fall in some way, we should regain We should move on with increased energy. So I need to try harder. Rather than, you see, if you go into the negative side, it brings you down and makes it more and more difficult to get back on your feet. Oh, I'm so bad. I can't forgive myself. I got up 3 minutes late. I'm aroused. My mind wandered for a minute while I was chanting. I'm such a rascal. I'm so bad. I'm so bad. That's all making it worse for you, bringing you down, down, down. It should be positive. Oh, I'm so appreciative that I have the chance to chant. Oh, I didn't get up early. Tomorrow morning I'll get up early and I'll be able to do more devotional service. It just has to be a positive thing. So forgiving yourself is a positive thing. It's allowing yourself another chance. I'll do it again tomorrow. I'll do it better. It's important. Okay. Slamshi says, Mahatma Prabhuji, I am sad that I'm feeling the way I do. I am not upset at the devotee or angry with the devotee, but I feel sad that I let it come to me. Let it get to me. What really bothered me was that this devotee tried to prevent my preaching. I don't know what to do or say. So I haven't spoken to this devotee for a while. How can I get through this? You probably need to write me because I would need to know more details. And general answer may not help you. It may not deal with the specifics. There's a statement that Prabhupada made that really has inspired me. Many, many times in my life I've been inspired by this. And Prabhupada said, we shouldn't, it's like what Alan said, is, don't just think you're holy, be holy. Prabhupada said, we should not act like ordinary people. And one of the devotees was Prabhupada's servant. He was doing something, and he was being intolerant of non-devotees. And repeatedly he was being intolerant. Then Prabhupada turned to him and said, you should not act like ordinary people. In other words, you're a devotee, you're different. So he was being intolerant, and Prabhupada pointed out, he said, you're acting like an ordinary person who cannot tolerate something. But a devotee is meant to be tolerant. So don't act like an ordinary person. So what I would say to you in this situation is try to see what Krishna is teaching you and try to see what Krishna wants you to do in this situation. And it's an opportunity to not act like an ordinary person, but to act like a devotee. What does Krishna want you to do? How does Krishna want you to deal with this situation? Now, I know it's difficult because we're dealing with emotions here. We're hurt. We're feeling a certain way. But emotions teach us. So what is that emotion teaching you? What are you supposed to learn from this? How are you supposed to adjust, rectify, move on? And then if you're still having problems, then you can write me. You can email me, and I'll give you my email, which is mahat, @aol.com, and then we can discuss that more. It's always important to see whenever we're hurt or whenever there's difficulty, how am I supposed to act in this situation? What is the Krishna conscious way to deal with this? What would Krishna expect me to do? What would Prabhupada expect of me? How would Prabhupada deal with this? And use that as a way to gauge what you should do and what you should understand from it. Bhakti Jeff says, I'm always in anxiety that if I wake up at 5 or later, Prabhupada is very disappointed and it's not such a nice feeling. You can turn that, of course, in a sense, I mean, that's a good anxiety in a sense. But if you do wake up late, then I don't think you should think Prabhupada is totally disappointed. You should just think, let me try to do better tomorrow. Or say, Prabhupada, I'll do better tomorrow. I'll make the effort. Because if we're always feeling guilty or shameful or like that, it will be hard or more difficult to execute devotional service. And we don't, we want to be motivated by our love for Prabhupada, ultimately not our fear, but our love and our affection. So try to increase your affection to satisfy Prabhupada rather than focus on your fear of not such a nice feeling. Prabhupada, he appreciates anything you do, and I'm sure he's happy that you're up at 5 chanting. No doubt. And he'll be happier if you're up at 4. But certainly he's happy that you're up and chanting, and he appreciates whatever service whatever it might be. You should know that for certain. And feel that appreciation. And that will be a positive energy. And that type of appreciation will help you go further. Even when I can think that it would be best to rise early, but I just don't or can't get the motivation. Yes. It has to become more important to you. And one of the ways it can become more important is by chanting better rounds, because then you'll be motivated to get up early, because you'll know the earlier you get up, generally the better the rounds you'll chant. Or whatever it is that you will do in the morning that becomes a valuable spiritual practice for you can motivate you. Ultimately in bhakti, we have to be motivated by a desire to do something through attraction. We can only force ourselves so long. There has to be some attraction. So, RT is saying, can I preach to people about Krishna at my age? I think you said, what, you were 50? So, yeah, it's nice to preach to people your age, whatever your age is. It's generally easier to preach to people your own age. Especially if you're 50, it's really, for a 20-year-old to preach to a 50-year-old, it's hard. Because the 50-year-old's going to think, this is like my son or daughter, what do they know? So actually, the older you get, the easier it is. My experience. Alan, forgiveness is a choice. Yes, we spoke about that last week. How that's such a powerful statement. It's a choice. Because we're saying, I can't forgive. No, that's not true. You can choose to forgive. Love is a choice. A good marriage is a choice. Happiness is a choice. It won't do any good to chant 16 rounds if you don't make the right choices. It took me 30 years to learn this. Forgive me, I'm no one. I just wish people would realize that it's easy to choose to be compassionate. Yeah, it's true. Such a good point. A lot of times we get stuck in the I can't, when really, what we're really saying is I choose not to. So we can when we say I can't, then we need to ask ourselves, is it really that I can't? Okay, you say, Mahatma, but I can't jump to the moon. All right, I acknowledge you can't jump to the moon, at least not in your present state, until you become a great yogi. But there may be other things which are a little more realistic that you're saying I can't. And if you acknowledge that you're really choosing not to do them, that will help you, because then you realize, well, actually, I could do them if I desired to do it. And just like Jeff is saying, it's so hard to get up early, and he can think, well, I'm not choosing strongly enough to get up earlier, and I can choose to do that, and it is possible. Thank you, Alan, for all that. You are hired as the assistant coach for forgiveness. Okay. Spark in the Heart says, a devotee staying in our house, he is staying for a long time, and naturally the conditioned soul in me started developing a kind of ill feeling about him. One day I got a message from his brother that he is not coming to the house. This was the opportunity I was waiting for, and I opened up to him. But in my heart I was feeling heavy that I'm doing an offense, but again, the demon in me took over that pious thought. After some time, I'm feeling so much love for him. So how can I develop this love for him? Well, the conundrum that we're dealing with is, on one hand, we have these high ideals of Krishna consciousness, to be forgiving, to be humble, to be tolerant, to be compassionate, to give up our own interest for the interest of others. And then we have the conditioned side, which is often quite opposite of that. And then we're playing with those two. And we know that the qualities of the pure devotee are so wonderful that if we possess them, we would be able to touch other people's hearts. We would be able to feel deep levels of satisfaction and peace and happiness in our own life, and be able to therefore give that and show that to others. we know that in our intelligence, but emotionally there are contaminations in our heart, which contaminations to retaliate, to take advantage of others, to not be compassionate, to put ourselves above others, and so forth. So becoming a devotee means that we're dealing with both of these simultaneously. And oftentimes one is going to overtake the other. One of the ways to motivate ourselves to act in a Krishna conscious manner is to just look at the repercussions of actions and thoughts and attitudes which are not Krishna conscious, and actions and thoughts and attitudes which are, and understand. And by doing that, we begin to understand and see how difficult we make it upon ourselves when we're not acting in Krishna consciousness. How those thoughts and activities contaminate us and make us basically miserable people. And how acting on the level of a devotee is really what we want as spirit souls, and aside from that is really what will make us happy. And so by doing that, we can become more motivated to do what's right, even though when we feel like doing what's wrong. I don't like the scripture says, it's an offense to see a devotee and not be happy. So you see some devotee and go, oh no, there's so and so. And you feel unhappy. That's considered an offense to a devotee. But we may feel that way. So when that happens, then we think it over and think, okay, what is the proper way? What would be the proper way to deal in this situation with this person? How should I think towards them? And pray and ask Krishna, please give me help, power and help to be able to think that way, because that's what I want to do. And that's the battle. That's going to be going on all the time. And then I find it's very powerful when you acknowledge where your weakness is. Then when you're chanting japa, on some level you can be praying to Krishna, please help me become more compassionate or more kind, or whatever the quality is that you would like to develop. You can be begging the holy name, please reveal to me how I can develop that, or please endow me with that quality. So now that you're focused on that, you know, I really need to work on this. And you're begging the holy name to help you. Hare Krishna, please, Krishna, help. Allow me to be compassionate towards other people, to devotees. Allow me to be their servant rather than want to be served. It's very powerful. I did that at a japa retreat, and just Krishna revealed a lot of what I needed to understand at that time to deal with some of the anarthas that I was dealing with. So you can employ that process. Krishna, certainly Krishna can do that for you. He can help you through whatever mess you're in. He can help you through it. You have to have that faith and pray to the name to do that, and you'll see amazing things happen. Okay. Spark in the Heart says, even if I see through the Shastra to serve the devotees, at times I'm losing to the demoniac tendencies. How can I maintain to think through the Shastras consistently? You have to read the Shastra in the mood of developing, following the teachings of the Shastra. If you just read it as knowledge, it's not going to work. You have to be in the mood that I'm reading this to apply it. That's the idea. And you have to put into practice. See, if you don't put into practice, at least fake it till you make it practice, it's just going to become extremely difficult. So I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it because this is what I should be doing. This is what I'm supposed to do. So I'm going to make every effort, even though I don't feel like doing it, I'm going to make every effort to do it. That's the self-discipline we need. And then praying to the holy name. So you say, yeah, I realize I made an offense. Yeah, you should let the devotee know you offended him and pray that he forgives you. And then pray to the holy name that you don't offend devotees in the future. And the holy name is so powerful. You can pray for strength to deal with your particular problems. And you will see that if you pray to the holy name for strength, when you run into these situations that are difficult for you, you will see Krishna will supply you with the spiritual energy and intelligence to be more successful in acting the way you've read you should act. So now It's 9:28, and we should end class. So we will get into more practical details of the process of forgiveness. Please read that article, Living a Life of Total Forgiveness, on my website. Mahat, M-A-H-A, website, no. www.tstrain.com. The newsletters, going to Living a Life of Total Forgiveness. And we will be back here next week. Tell anyone that you know that would be interested in this topic to come visit us. And we will see you again then. Hare Krishna.